Today we're doing 6th grade math, chapter 5, lesson 2. We're going to be talking about absolute value. The easiest way to think about what absolute value is it is how far away the number is from 0. So we have a number line here, and we're going to go ahead and do this. Absolute value. 0 is going to be the most important part of absolute value. So whether your number is 3 or negative 3, so 3 here would be 1, 2, 3 jumps away from 0. So the absolute value of 3 is 3. And absolute value will be written like this. You'll have a number with 2 lines on each side of it, like a little bar. On the other side, we have negative 3. It is still 1, 2, 3 jumps. So the absolute value of negative 3 will be 3. So again, the definition of what absolute value is how far away that number is from 0. That's going to be your very first thing. You may want to put that in your notes. Absolute value is referring to how far away that number is from 0. So shortcut. It's easy to remember is this. No matter what the number, positive or negative, when you see these bars, it's asking for the value of the number inside. So absolute value of 4 would be 4. The absolute value of negative 4, since it's on the inside, will be negative. Oh, sorry, will just be 4. It will be 4, because negative 4 is 4 away from 0. Now, it gets a little trickier when you do something like this. It's asking for the absolute value of whatever 5 minus 2 is on the inside. We all know that 5 minus 2 will be 3, so this is actually asking for what the absolute value of 3 is, which is just 3. So you can actually have equations inside of the bars asking you what the absolute value is. Another example would be something like this. 1 minus 5, the absolute value of 1 minus 5. We know that when I subtract 5 away from 1, it's going to become the absolute value of negative 4. And remember, even though there's a negative on the inside, it's asking how far away from 0 it is on a number line. 0 is here, negative 4 is here, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. It is 1, 2, 3, 4 jumps away. So the absolute value of negative 4 would just be 4. So again, absolute value is going to determine everything inside of it. Now there's another even trickier type of problem. What happens if I give you something like this? The negative symbol is on the outside. I'm going to find the absolute value of 2, which will just be 2. But because this negative is not on the inside of the absolute value, it's going to still be there at the end. So the absolute value of 2 with a negative symbol on the outside will end up being 2 with a negative symbol in front of it, which will then become negative 2. So you're taking the absolute value of everything on the inside. The outside will be different. Let's do a quick thing. What happens if I do 3 plus the absolute value of negative 4? This is the same thing as saying 3 plus 4, because the absolute value of negative 4, what's on the inside, is 4. This will equal 7. So my answer to 3 plus the absolute value of negative 4 will be 7. Now, let's say I have 10 minus the absolute value of negative 3. We are only looking for what's inside of the absolute value. This negative here is going to stay by itself. So I can start rewriting this 10 minus, and then whatever the absolute value of negative 3 is, which will be 3. So this becomes 10 minus 3, which will equal 7. And 7 will be my answer. So this is a quick kind of front loading, but let's go ahead and get into the chapter. Absolute value and opposites is what we're going to be talking about. We have not covered opposites yet, but we'll get there. The distance between a number and 0 on a number line is called its absolute value. Each mark on the number line indicates 1 yard. Draw a tree 3 yards. A tree 3? Okay. Draw a tree 3 yards west of the house. Draw a mailbox 3 yards east of the house. Now, east is this direction. West is this direction. They want us to draw a tree 3 yards west of the house. So 1, 2, 3. And there's my tree. It's not pretty. It is what it is. And they want us to draw a tree 3 yards to the east. Oh, draw a mailbox 3 yards to the east. So, boom. And I'm not the best artist. Here's the little flag, whatever. There's a mailbox. Both are going to be an absolute value of 3, even though to the west this would technically be -3, because -1, -2, and the house would represent 0. This would be 1, 2, 3. They're all going to be 3 jumps away from the house. So the absolute value of -3 would be 3. And the absolute value of 3 would also be 3. The distance between the house and the tree is 3 yards. The distance between the house and the mailbox is also 3 yards. The tree and the mailbox are in blank directions from the house. Tree, they are both 3 yards away from the house, no matter if you go to the west or the east. And then how does the number line above help you understand the value?
Marina, please call the office. Marina, please call the office.
Real world link. Jesse leaves home and walks 4 blocks west to the grocery store to buy milk, then returns home. He then walks another 4 blocks east to the post office. Compare the distance and the direction of Jesse's house and the post office from the grocery store. So Jesse leaves home and walks 4 blocks to the west of the grocery store to buy milk, then returns. So here's his house, and he walks 4 blocks. I said to the west, so it'd be this direction. And comes back. He did 1, 2, 3, 4 jumps, and then did 1, 2, 3, 4 jumps back home. So he walked 4 blocks one way and walked 4 blocks the other way. Compare the distance and direction of Jesse's house and the post office. He walks another 4 blocks to the east. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the post office and the grocery store, if we're comparing, are exactly the same amount of distance. One's just to the east and one's to the west. They're both 4 blocks away. Their absolute value is 4 blocks, or 4. So it doesn't matter if you went one way or the other way, because remember, technically on a number line, if we go to the left, we are in negative territory. If we go to the right, we're in positive territory. But with absolute value, you're still going a certain distance, and it doesn't matter if you go -4 or +4, you're still going 4 away from 0, which is what absolute value is trying to explain. Now, we're going to get into opposites. Positive numbers such as 2 are graphed to the right or above 0 on a number line. Negative numbers such as -2 are graphed to the left or below. We've talked about this in our graphing, our plot chart that we have in our classroom. Opposites are numbers that are the same distance from 0 in opposite directions. Since 0 is not negative nor positive, 0 is its own opposite. The opposite of the opposites of a number is the number itself. For example, the opposite of 3 would be -3. And the opposite of -3 would be 3. This is typed up weird. But yeah, to find an opposite, you just go the opposite direction. So there's an easy way to do this. If your number that you're finding the opposite has a negative symbol, drop it. So the opposite of -5 would just be 5. On the other hand, the opposite of 5 would be -5. It's just, think of it like it's evil twin. The integer -5 uses a negative symbol. The opposite of a negative symbol is a positive symbol. So the opposite of -5 is +5. Or just 5. Find the opposite of 4. 4 is 4 away from 0. The other direction would be -4. And there's your answer. I'm erasing these because apparently I've already done some work in here. So, moving back to opposites. The opposite of 3 would be just -3. We just add the negative. And the opposite of -2, we'd get rid of the negative and it would just be 2. So again, opposites are just going to be the other version of the number on a number line. So if it's positive, you turn it into a negative. If it's negative, you turn it into a positive. If the number is 0, the opposite of 0 is still 0. Since 0 is not negative nor positive, it is its own opposite. All right, and then we're going to get into these little tricky kind of examples. The absolute value of a number is the distance between the number and 0 on a number line, as we discussed before. So -4 and 4 both have an absolute value of 4. The integers -4 and 4 are each 4 units from 0, even though they are on opposite sides of 0. -4 is read absolute value of -4. Remember, we talked about the negative symbol being on the inside of the absolute value symbols. Evaluate. -7. -7 is still 7 units away from 0. Even though we went in negative territory, it's still 7 different steps. So the absolute value of -7 will be 7. Evaluate. Absolute value of 5 plus the absolute value of -6. We talked about this as well earlier. The absolute value of -6 will be 6. The absolute value of 5 will just be 5. 5 plus 6 will be 11, and there's my answer. Now, please do not get mixed up with the absolute values and the opposites. Absolute value will always be a positive outcome, as long as there's not like a negative symbol hanging out on the outside. It is how many jumps away from 0 is it, so it's always going to be a positive number. Opposites are just giving it a positive number, a negative symbol, or a negative symbol turning into a positive. Evaluate absolute value of -7 minus the absolute value of 3. The absolute value of -7 will become just 7. The absolute value of 3 will become 3. We then add our subtraction back into it because it was an equation. 7 minus 3 will equal 4. And that's it. Now let's do these ones. And you guys can pause it here so you guys can do these 3 problems. And I'm going to do these on the digital whiteboard. So if you would like to pause to try this out and then unpause to see if you did it correctly, go for it now. We're going to do C, the absolute value of 14. The absolute value of 14 will equal 14. This is not opposite. This is absolute value. And remember, these little symbols here, these lines on the sides, indicate that this is absolute value. So for C, the answer is 14. For D, absolute value of -9 plus the absolute value of 3. The absolute value of -9 will become just 9, plus the absolute value of 3 will become 3. 9 plus 3 will give us 12. So my answer to that problem is 12. And our last example today is -8 minus, the absolute value of -8. Absolute value of -8 minus the absolute value of -2. Now remember, the only things we're looking at are the absolute values here. We're going to ignore this. We're just going to bring this down into our new equation. We're going to solve what the absolute value of -8 is first, which is 8, because -8 is 8 spaces away from 0. And we're going to find the absolute value of -2, which is just 2, because -2 is 2 spaces away from 0. our little subtraction that was here but not in the box comes straight down. So my new equation becomes 8 minus 2, which will be 6. So my answer there is 6. We can do this example, and then we're going to call this one a video for today. A seagull is flying 25 feet above sea level. Nevaeh is diving 15 feet below sea level. What is the distance between Nevaeh and the seagull? So, I'm going to go ahead and draw a little bit of a diagram here. So sea level refers to the top of the waves. Nevaeh is diving. She is going 15 feet below sea level. So if this was a number line or a y-axis, here's our line. Nevaeh, here she is diving deep, is 15 feet below, or negative 15. It's 15 feet below sea level. Our little seagull that's flying is above sea level 25 feet, or positive 25. Sea level here, the top of the ocean, will be considered 0. So 0 down negative 15 would be the absolute value of negative 15, which is still, if I do 15 different jumps down to 15, it will still be 15. I know that wasn't 15 jumps, but we get it. The positive value of 25 feet above sea level will still be 25, absolute value of 25. We want to know what the total distance between the two is. So we're going to add these two values together because Nevaeh is down here and the seagull is up here. We want to know how much distance is their total. This is where absolute value comes into place. I don't do 25 minus 15 or anything like that because all of this is still time traveled. This is still a distance that has been traveled. You can't travel a negative distance. Even if you walk somewhere and walk back, you can't undo that. You still walked there and walked back. That still counts. It's not negative travel. You can't put a car in reverse and try to take miles off of it. It does not work. Therefore, this is where absolute values come into place. Or come into play, I should say. Negative 15, the absolute value of negative 15, which represents Nevaeh's 15 feet dive down into the ocean, plus the 25, the absolute value of 25, which represents the 25 feet that our little seagull is above sea level, will give us our answer. The absolute value of negative 15 will be 15, plus the absolute value of 25 will just be 25. When I add these two together, I'm going to get 5 plus 5 is 10, carry the 1. 1, 2, and 1 will make 4. My distance between the two should be 40 feet. Think of it this way, if the seagull were to dive from where it was flying all the way down to where Nevaeh is diving, it would be 40 feet. 25 until it hits the ocean, and then another 15 down would make it 40 feet. And that's it. So the distance is 40 feet between the two. So again, recap. Absolute value is written like this, with a number inside. This means it is taking the distance from this number from 0. If it's positive, it will still remain positive, and if it is negative, it will become positive. So the absolute value of negative 3 will be 3. Absolute values do not become negative unless you do some trickery, like we talked about before, where there's a negative symbol outside of this. So we'd still do the absolute value of 7, which would be 7, then the negative symbol comes in. Anything on the inside will not come out negative. So again, if I have negative 13, absolute value of negative 13, this will be just 13 because my negative symbol is on the inside of the absolute value markers. And remember, negative 13 is 13 steps away from 0 to the left on the number line, or on a y-axis, it'll be 13 down from 0 on a number line. So absolute value refers to the distance that number is away from 0. Opposites are the complete opposite. If something is positive, the opposite of it will be negative. And vice versa. If I have a negative 15, its opposite will be just 15. So opposites are just turning a number from positive to negative or negative to positive. And then do not forget to add this into your notes. If your number is 0, the opposite of 0 is 0, because 0 is neither positive nor negative. 0 is just nothing. The opposite of nothing in math is nothing, not something. So opposite of 0 will just be 0 again. As always, this has been Mr. P. If you have any questions at all and you're in my class, please bring them to class tomorrow. Otherwise, if you're not in my class, you can leave a comment and I can get back to you as soon as I can. And as always, this is Mr. P, and I will catch you guys on the next one.